So we just had an amazing conversation with Alisa Vitti from FLO Living. And, part of me, when I talk to her, I almost think she's like a nutritional explorer. Like she takes all this information from the wild and puts it together in a way that for the people that she works with makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious because some might call this a non-traditional model of dealing with these things. So I'm always fascinated what your reactions are to solutions like these.
I want to say, first of all, I have found myself much more open-minded than I was maybe 10 or 15 years ago when she first got started with functional nutrition and the like. And I think it's fascinating. We're borrowing all kinds of learnings from different cultures. But once again, it is a founder story that's personal. She needed to solve a personal problem, and the traditional routes were not helpful for her. So I admire that immensely. I love hearing her story.
What do you think was the biggest catalyst that made you, as you said, more open to some of these kinds of solutions? Was it that you were seeing medicine in certain areas failing women, or, what sort of motivated it?
I really have to give that credit to my patients who teach me things every day because sometimes my focus might be narrowed because of my training, traditional training as an OBGYN, and now I am in the, supplement space, if you will, well-studied supplements for that matter. But my patients will find things that are sometimes off the beaten path or just things that I have maybe not been exposed to that are really working for them when the traditional paths have not. So I feel like I have to be open-minded and do my vetting and really come up with an opinion and trust in the intelligence of others.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's take a listen to Alyssa.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alisa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun-Scherl. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We are so excited to have our guest today, Alisa Vitti, who's the founder and CEO of FLO Living. Welcome.
It's so great to be here, Rachel and Dr. Dweck. Such a pleasure.
So let's jump right in. Tell us what FLO Living is, where the idea came from, who's benefiting from it.
Yeah, I mean, FLO Living, is a natural hormonal healthcare platform that helps women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s deal with the common, issues that they might be facing from a GYN perspective. So they may have PMS, they may have, heavy bleeding, they might have some fibroid difficulty, they might be trying to conceive and wanting to optimize their process either naturally or during the IVF journey, and they might be going through perimenopause symptoms and they want to take action. And so I wanted to, because of my own experience with PCOS, build a platform that really supports women from an education perspective, that telehealth support perspective for some one-on-one guidance, and with products that actually create some leverage in addition to the dietary and lifestyle guidance that we provide. So I ended up formulating supplements to support these specific conditions as well. So that's what we do. We really help women navigate their hormonal ups and downs throughout their reproductive years. And we do that through our proprietary nutrition and supplement and guidance support.
I know you are so well known for your seed cycling,
cycle
plan.
thinking.
Cycle
I
thinking.
talk a little bit about seed cycling. It's not it
Cycle
doesn't,
syncing.
cycle
Please
syncing is the thing.
forgive me. Yeah. Fill me in on that and also on your background because, this is not something that like we're not really taught about this type of stuff necessarily in medical school. I don't know whether it's, standard for nutrition, people training in nutrition. So tell us about your training and about the cycle syncing.
Yeah, my journey to how I ended up doing this is definitely not linear. I started off at Johns Hopkins planning to become an OBGYN, and then I had my own hormonal health crisis with PCOS. If you want to picture me, I was 210 pounds. I was covered face, chest, and back in cystic acne. I did not get my first period until I was 2 months shy of my 16th birthday. And then I did not really get any periods until like the age of 22 when I sort of solved this issue. But I mean, if you can imagine going for a whole decade without menstruating when you should have been from 12 to 22, it certainly made an impression. And
For sure.
navigating that whole care journey really opened my eyes to a couple of things. One, that I was one of a multitude of women, not just with PCOS, but any of these issues that conventional gynecology, unfortunately, we just don't have a lot of tools for it, right? We have birth control,
Right.
we have surgery, and those things are great. But there's all these other symptoms and day-to-day experiences that we just aren't getting the support that we need. So it opened my eyes to that. And I thought to myself, well, if conventional gynecology isn't necessarily something that could help me, maybe there's another field of study that I could go into that would allow me to not only help myself, but also maybe find a way to create a solution for women just like me. And that's kind of how I
Sure.
began my journey. And
This is what
luckily,
I love about talking to founders. Like that sentence that you just said, I have a problem and I don't see a solution. So I'm going to dig deep and find a solution that's going to help,
I mean, and
hundreds of thousands of women.
I had no intentions of being a quote unquote entrepreneur. I really came at this through the practitioner
Yeah.
viewpoint of, how can I one-on-one help women? And what I ended up doing at first for a decade was I had a clinical practice in Midtown Manhattan, and I saw, people one-on-one. And I focused my field of study on functional nutrition after, I was very lucky to be at Johns Hopkins. What was coming out of the Human Genome Project at the time was just really this very powerful bit of research looking at identical twins and why would one get a disease and the other one wouldn't. And really, we looked at sort of this idea of the epigenome being something that we could manipulate with diet and lifestyle as the key levers. And that really sparked my first step in the journey. And again, you have to imagine this is 25 years ago, Dr. Greg.
Sure.
There was no functional medicine. There was no Institute for Functional Medicine. There was no, I mean, that just didn't even exist. And so I thought
Yeah,
to
you were
myself,
really on the pulse. Uh-huh.
well, I was really eager to feel better. And I thought if we could prevent diseases in identical twins just by manipulating diet and lifestyle, what could we do to the endocrine system if we start
Yeah.
manipulating diet and lifestyle? And so I just started looking at order of operations in the endocrine system. What's the primary function, glucose, balancing. I built the protocol from there, got some nutritional training, and started applying that protocol in my clinical practice. And so that's my background. That's how it kind of all came together. And in my practice, I just started seeing the most remarkable things happening. So not only did I personally experience a complete remission of my own PCOS symptoms, 60-pound weight loss, skin clearing, ovulation restoration, mood stability, no more insomnia, like just night and day. I mean, it's like when women talk about going on HRT and feeling like the lights are going back on, I had that experience in my 20s because I was living in a pseudomenopausal state with the PCOS hormonal levels that I had. Not ovulating, not enough progesterone. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I was anxious all the time. It was a total mess. So it really was life-changing for me personally to get well. But then seeing women in my practice who, for example, I had this one client who was preoperative for ovarian cysts. She was terrified of having the surgery. I said, no problem. She said, I want to do whatever I can to see if I can avoid this surgery.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't think you need to worry about this surgery so much, but let's go ahead and do all the things anyway. So, at that time, it took, I felt 6 months for a woman to go through these protocols and get the results that we were hoping for. She had the surgery scheduled for 3 months after we began. And I said, okay, let's just set some expectations that we may not achieve what it is that you want, but certainly all of this is useful for you to prevent recurrence of ovarian cysts in the future. I get a call the day after her surgery had been scheduled from her doctor, and her doctor said, "Hi, I've learned from my patient that you have been working with her, and I'd like to talk to you about what you did." And I said, well, "Is everything okay?"
I
And
love that.
and he said, "Yes, everything is fine, except that we didn't have to do the surgery." I said, "What do you mean you didn't have to do the surgery?" He said, "Well, we did the preoperative ultrasound, and there were no more cysts.
Yeah.
They were gone." And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." And so I was talking to him about what we did. And he thought, you're really onto something with, helping women improve estrogen metabolism, which is one of the pieces of the protocol. And it was really one of those moments in my practice where I thought, gee, I would love to be able to help more women. And then how I ended up starting FLO Living, 10 years into this practice, was it just became this bottleneck. Me trying to schedule people, not just in Manhattan, but then I was getting, word of mouth was spreading. I remember trying to negotiate time zone differences with women in India who wanted to help with their PCOS, or women on the West Coast. And I said, I can't. There has to be a way. This is what I said to myself in 2010. There has to be. This was novel at the time. There has to be a way to use technology to, make this a one-to-many solution.
Yeah.
And that's when I sat down and put together, a little deck and tried to figure out what to do. And that's how
I have to say, I mean, I think this field has evolved so amazingly over the past
yeah,
15 years. I
yeah,
know, I think we met way back when this was all first starting.
yeah.
I do have a couple of questions, really out of ignorance. The supplements that you use for balance or whatnot, how do you choose the ingredients? How do they get vetted? Are they studied? Is it, just older, practices? Tell me how you choose your products.
Yeah, so I do the formulations myself, and what goes into that process is really just 25 years of researching, what is going to move the
Hmm.
needle in terms of these specific conditions. A. B, I also cross-reference all PubMed research, that really looks at what are the effective doses for these, because there's a lot of what I'll call pixie dusting in the market.
Yes.
So femtech has exploded, but also the supplement market has, unfortunately, also exploded. And why I say unfortunately is because you get a lot of things that make bold promises, but then
Oh, yeah.
when you look at the ingredients,
The noise.
they might have the right ingredients, but they don't have effective doses. And so that's why our products are, I would probably argue, the most expensive products on the marketplace, because the doses are clinically vetted in terms of how there's so much ingredient that if we're going to give you berberine, we're going to give you the dose that is studied to move the needle for PCOS, right? If we're going to put something in that's supposed to help you with estrogen metabolism, it has to be at the right dose. Or if we're talking about preconception support and you need a certain amount of coenzyme Q10, you have to have a specific dose in order for that to actually be effective the way that the research talks about.
Sure.
And I think that that's sort of how we go about formulating the products, is to make sure that we don't have any superfluous ingredients. We have ingredients that are researched to do things that we're saying that they're going to help you do in the body.
Yeah.
And we just want to make sure that women are getting the value from the products that they're
Yeah.
taking.
It's funny. In my world, we do see a lot of, I would say, skepticism about supplements, particularly as it relates to hepatotoxicity or liver injury. And when we query patients, they don't always tell us what their supplements are because they don't consider them medications or whatnot. So it is so important to have the right dosing. This is a question that you may not even have an answer to, but do you feel like the endocrine disrupting chemicals in our universe that, have really increased over time are to blame for a lot of these hormonal imbalances, or do you have another theory? Because it just seems it's so common now, and I don't think it's just commonly diagnosed.
Yeah, so I love that you're bringing that up. I think that we know that our generation is exposed to more EDCs in a 30-day period of time than our great grandparents were exposed to in their entire lifetime.
Right.
That and I actually just saw a body of research that came out just this week about the fact that the combination of exposure to EDCs plus climate change, aka rising temperatures, is actually already suppressing fertility in subtropical areas just because the conflagration of those two things is affecting our endocrine system so dramatically. We don't have a chance to adapt to that. So yes, it's not easy for ovaries out there, as I've always said, because I've said that probably for the past 20 years, but it's getting worse
It's funny.
because of the EDCs. And we see this also. I have colleagues who are pediatricians, they're scared. They have,
Yeah.
children who are coming in. I'm sure you've heard this from your own friends.
Yeah.
Children who are coming in at 7, 8, and 9, starting to develop breasts or
Yeah.
to develop, and this is not just affecting girls, also boys. Puberty is coming earlier and earlier due to the EDCs. What does this actually mean? When we're talking about rapid aging of the ovary, and we're not just having that be an experience that's confined to, let's say, a menopausal moment. We're talking about that's happening to a girl who's under 10 because her ovary is aging to such a degree due to the exposure to these EDCs, the inflammaging of the ovary, the ovarian mitochondria are no longer able to function properly. And that dysregulates everything. It's not just about the endocrine system, it's also the way that that intersects with ovarian function.
So here's today's hot flash. We know that reproductive health implications from endocrine disrupting chemicals are vast and can affect fertility, reduced ovarian reserve, polycystic ovarian syndrome, early puberty, and premature menopause.
So one of the things that Alisa has educated me in, and I know that she starts with her patients, is almost any condition, at a minimum, you should start with lifestyle changes, whether it's nutrition or hydration or exercise or your sleep hygiene. But one of the challenges is it's very hard to get people to change their behavior. I'm struck by your patient who within 3 months went from needing, serious surgery to not needing it. What is different about how
Yeah.
you're working with patients so that they're actually doing this stuff? I remember during COVID, if I read one more post about, oh, I gave up sugar, I stand on my head 12 hours a day, I walk 30 miles, I'm like, that's amazing. But lots of people find that there's a lot of inertia associated with trying to make these enormous changes. How are you getting people to do it?
I certainly think that my absolute infectious love affair with the female ecosystem and biology is it's something that helps because I do purposefully try to get a woman excited about how incredible her biology is, because they come into the process feeling cursed, right? When you have a hormonal crisis, I was there, I have lived through it. It doesn't feel fun. It's not, you're like, this isn't fair. Why is this happening to me? I get that. But that's only happening because of some negative inputs. We're going to fix those inputs, and then the amazing beauty and majesty that is your female body is going to start to reveal itself and recover its natural balance. And it is so cool. And first, I get them excited about that. I tell them what I believe is the correct narrative, because the narrative that we all kind of grow up with is that being a woman is a liability. Your hormones are going to be like a total,
Train wreck.
yeah, in varying degrees across your lifespan, and good luck. Maybe we can, good luck, and that's not a fun position to be in because it puts you in a position of either feeling like you hate your body or you want to ignore it. So first and foremost, it's all about, let me get you excited about what's possible. Then let me educate you on how your hormones actually work and what is needed to support them, and to orient you to the fact that you have a critical role to play in managing those inputs. Fix the inputs, then the endocrine system and the ovaries can do their job, which is to balance your hormones. You do not balance your hormones. Your body does, but all you have to do is, because, unfortunately, your ovaries cannot pick up a fork and eat what they need to optimize their functioning, right? Your thyroid cannot do the same thing either. You're the one with the hands. So if we can just get you to pick the right things and feed this ecosystem what it wants, then it will do for you what it is designed to do. And that is sort of just the high level, how we get a person to take action. The other reason, Rachel, is because when you are suffering, you are motivated to make changes because you want to see results. And then I think the third thing is that we have data that shows women that this is not just a fun idea, right? So for example, we just did this clinical trial on the cycle syncing method.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you that.
That shows women that this is not just a trend or something that I wrote about in the book. This is absolutely something that you can feel confident about trying, that's going to help you practically eliminate your PMS, right?
Talk a little bit for a minute, if you would, about the design of the study
Yeah.
and what you were measuring.
So, listen, I had been using the cycle syncing methodology for many, many years before I wrote the book. And then when the book came out, which was funny because it was right at the start of COVID. So I was supposed to go on like a book tour, and then I got grounded, but I ended up doing like 100 different podcast interviews as just like organically that started happening. I remember from my crazy Airbnb that I was sequestered in. And I thought, okay, that's the best you could do for a COVID book launch. Like, but what was really remarkable was just seeing how truly happy women were to have some validation about their lived experience of living inside of these different cycle phases. So cycle syncing is this method that I created basically after uncovering the secondary biological clock in the body, the infradian clock, that governs the menstrual cycle. I said, okay, well, like we have lifestyle that aligns with our circadian rhythm, we need that for our infradian rhythm. And the research was showing us that we need, we have a metabolic rate change first half of the cycle to the second half. We have cortisol level changes, resting cortisol level changes. We have immunological changes in different phases of the cycle. So it's only logical that we would adapt and adjust our food, our exercise, our rest. We even need more sleep in the luteal phase. I mean, it's just, you're just not exactly the same each day of the month. And women were really eager to start adopting this lifestyle. But then, of course, skepticism being a healthy thing is like, well, how do we know this is going to work? And I love that because, one of the things I called out in the second book, In the Flow, was that there is this gender bias, which I think it was the first book to really talk about that in a formal way, like that biohacking has this male skew. And back when I was writing that book, intermittent fasting was considered the gold standard of diet, and HIIT workouts were the only thing you should be doing. And I looked at the research and I said, this is hurting women's ovarian health and fertility, and we're not having a gender nuanced conversation when it comes to nutrition and exercise, and that is hurting women's hormones. So cycle syncing was a response to that, and women really loved it. And then I said, well, let me do something about closing the gender gap in research to the extent that I can, which is going to be, it's going to take all of us doing that to get there. But I wanted to do my part. And so I said, let's put a study together that looks at, basically, how do we take all this anecdotal data we have from the virality of this method that has happened on social media, women dedicating their entire TikTok feed to their lifestyle, their cycle syncing lifestyle, and their results. Let's put a study to understand what is going on. And fundamentally what we wanted to do is to look at how does this method impact symptom burden and symptom severity during the cycle, right? And how long does that take? And how good do you have to be at cycle syncing? How compliant do you have to be at cycle syncing to get these results? And what we found was pretty remarkable, right? We had, I'm just going to sort of paraphrase, but we had an 86% reduction in PMS symptom burden and severity for 92% of study participants in 3 months, right? I mean, that's pretty much evaporating your PMS. And PMS, you have to remember, is something that women are told is what they should expect every month as something that they have to just sort of tolerate. When we know, in fact, that PMS is a hormone imbalance in the luteal phase.
I'm curious if the body would potentially tell you to follow cycle syncing without you following a formal plan. Like, in other words, when do you do your most intense workouts? Would your body know? Would you feel motivated to do that on your own without being in a study? I would suspect yes.
Well, of course, you're getting
That
all
type
this,
of thing.
you're getting that biofeedback, but the problem is
Yeah.
women have been trained, I'll use the word conditioned, to ignore the cues of their body. Like every
Yeah.
woman knows she's hungrier post-ovulation, right? In the luteal phase, because your metabolism speeds up. Studies show you need 279 more calories per day. But we are conditioned to continue to try as hard as we can to keep calorie restricting, and that
Yeah.
creates more insulin, or more glucose dysregulation, more insulin resistance. And then we have, suppression of progesterone production, worsening of PMS symptoms. It becomes a vicious cycle, just not listening to your hunger cues. But yes, they're naturally there. And that, I think, is what women love about the method, is it gives them permission to follow,
To listen.
to listen.
One final question, which is really a very appropriate for this conversation. How have the GLP-1s influenced your practice, your thoughts on some of this? Because in my opinion, this might just be the most unbelievable category of drug ever for health benefit. What's your thought?
Well, it hasn't impacted my practice so much. I would say that probably the PCOS category is the one that would be, let's say, leveraging it more.
Yeah.
I think we're just at the beginning of the peptide train, and I'm very eager to see, for example, one of my favorite peptides, which is not yet on the market from a pharmaceutical perspective, is MOTS-c, in terms of its impact on mitochondrial health, which for women from an ovarian perspective, and they're looking at it from a drug discovery perspective for PCOS, significant treatment. So it's really exciting what's coming. I think the GLPs are just one tiny fraction of what's possible. But it isn't impacting the practice or the business in any measurable way at this time. I would say, I do think women are in more need of nutritional support when they do embark on taking GLP-1s. I have definitely worked with clients who are taking them. Sometimes it hasn't been as effective as they've wanted, and they need to transition to something else. But I think all the foundational things are still really relevant. You have to be nourishing yourself correctly. You have to move your body. You have to train your muscles. You have to, take supplements to help your body be nourished, especially when you're taking medications like that. And you have to be understanding how your body works. So there, for sure, and I'm sure you've seen this, whether we're talking about GLPs or HRT or birth control or IVF, all things that we see all over the ecosystem within the FLO Living client base, there is no magic bullet when it comes to hormones. There is no cheat or quick fix. You have to come at this with 360 degrees of support. You may use supplements and pharmaceutical and hormone replacement, and you have, you're counting your macros and you're training you have to do it all. You might use a sleep tracker. I love using sleep trackers to help women boost their progesterone production, right? More deep sleep, better progesterone output in the following month. But there's so many great tools. That's what's exciting about the femtech ecosystem. That's what when Rachel and I see each other at every femtech conference throughout the year, one of the things that I love to sit back and look at is, 25 years ago when I got started, people looked at me like I was nuts. why are you starting a company like this? Why are you doing anything remotely related to hormonal health management that isn't birth control? And now, just that there is so much agency that an individual consumer has to buy devices, use wearables, purchase test blood work and testing from like LabCorp direct. I mean, there's no reason that you can't feel as an individual female like you should remain in the dark about how your hormones are working or what's wrong with you. You just have to kind of get started, use these products. There's so many companies in the space that are building tools and services that help you. We are one of them. But it's such an amazing time. I wouldn't even say this is like the birth of something totally new for women.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's just so exciting to be part of it.
Well, your enthusiasm is infectious and contagious as always.
Yes.
We will be looking forward to what's coming next from you. I know you have a lot of things you're cooking up over the next 12 months. So thank you for really trying to provide life-changing answers for women.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'll see you at the next conference for sure.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Dweck.
You're
Have
so
a great day.
welcome.
We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.